Welcome to Episodes from the Garage, the official, unofficial voice of the Elite Girls Rugby League. 11 teams from Connecticut to South Carolina and some of the best girls high school rugby in the States. Listen in for game recaps, stories, interviews, and more from in and around the EGRL. Episodes from the Garage is made possible with support from Basecamp 31, a New Jersey nonprofit that brings individuals and businesses together to invest in healthy community and personal development through shared human experience. And now, Episode 2.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Let's go around the horn again and reintroduce everybody. Let's start with Chris, who's normally behind the camera, but the one half or the lesser half of Production O'Brien. Oh, sorry, his dad's not here.
Morning, gentlemen. Chris O'Brien, part of Production O'Brien, as you already mentioned. Thank you for the intro, Steph.
Pleasure.
Brian Hearn.
Bill Dobbs, eye candy.
Steph Aliprandi propping up the eye candy.
Mike Eisenhart, just happy to be here.
Well, welcome back, guys, and we've got a pretty jam-packed agenda. So let's go through that quickly, and then we'll get into the conversation piece of it. So let's talk about an EGRL Selects update today. We'll also talk about emerging, some great news there, I think. And then we're going to talk about the WRCRA Conference, which Brian and Chris were in attendance for and have some great feedback for us on. And then schedules are up. We'll talk a little bit about that.
I have something to start with, though, outside of this.
We do have a
That's
monologue.
okay. It's not really a monologue. So
More of a diatribe.
for everybody who doesn't know this, we started this. We have a text thread. I think we're over 1 million texts. It goes on
This week.
this week. And the one thing, we bust on each other, we make fun of each other, all that, which is all good. But we all have each other's backs. And this is more of a show. This podcast today, it's more of a scam than anything else, because we're really here to start an intervention. And Brian, we all care about you. We all love you. But we really have to intervene. This obsession you have with Goff, you really, really need to break through on this. And I think this is the perfect format for this.
Oh, my God.
Hi, Brian.
We love you.
Okay, now we
Hey,
can
listen,
go on.
he promised he was going to start covering more women's rugby, so I'm going to take him at his word. So
That's fair.
we'll hold him to it.
You're a patient man, Mr. Goff.
That's all I had.
I think that starts us off on a good note. I think we're feeling the groove right away.
I think so, too. So like we talked about on the agenda, let's, Mike, guys, let's kick it off with EGRL Selects update, as we're in the throes of it right now.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. So Selects is going well. I mean, so just to kind of give some brief history, again, we mentioned it last time, but for those who might not have been on board or didn't catch episode 1, USA Rugby got in touch with us. The Pathways program, Martha Danes got in touch with us and said, "Hey, we'd like what you're doing. Would you be willing to try to put together an all-star team that we do this weekend down in Florida? We've done it for a couple of years. Midwest Thunderbirds, USA South Selects, Panthers, and we'd love to have a third team. And we're hoping that'll grow. The U18 kind of competitive landscape." We, of course, jumped on it, said yes, we'll figure it out. We pulled from most of the teams of the league. The Southern teams, kind of the new additions this year, are not involved because they start their season around that same time. So, they couldn't they had a conflict there. But we were able to pull from pretty much the Northern territories and the Central territory, right? So we've got Connecticut down to, let's say, Southern Virginia.
Not too bad.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, it's a good reach.
We started with a first 40, and the first 40, there was a pretty strict criteria on how we did it. The kids that were given all EGRL honors last year, in the inaugural year of the league, we sort of gave them a first shot at tryouts, and then from there were some specific nominations, a few from every team, and that rounded out our 40. So we kind of capped it there. So we bring those 40 together. We got them to the point where they were, kind of like almost like a combine on initial one, did some physical testing, took a look at some basic kind of rugby skills. And then we did another date a couple weeks later, looked specifically at playing,
Sure.
like did some drilling and whatnot, but then put them on the field and watched them play. And
And it was some good rugby, too.
There was some good rugby, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is. It's kind of a luxury so far. It's been sort of a luxury to have that many kids all together at the same time who have the same kind of championship attitude. You know, like I want this. I'm paying attention. I'm locked in. You know.
If I can interrupt there, the thing that I noticed when we were down in Maryland recently, and speaking right to that, was there was such, you've got that competitive mentality out there. And one of the things that rang true to us on the sidelines as we were filming and commentating was the amount of natural communication that was happening between these athletes, right?
Yeah,
What's the thing we always yell at about practice, right? Communication. Absolutely. Didn't have to say a damn thing to these guys, these athletes. I mean, it was fantastic. So
Well, and to add to that, we have to really make sure that our coaching is on point, because those kids were listening to every word and they were really following instruction well, and it was great to see.
100%.
It's powerful.
100%.
Yeah, it's actually nice. And coaching a girls' game, it's really nice. But anyway, because the girls listen, they
Yeah.
always ask the why and the how, but you never have to tell them, all right, quiet down or anything. Every now and again, but very rare.
Yeah.
With the Selects team, they come in, they're all business, and every player in the tryouts, and now that we're at the next phase, they're all full attention on whatever coach is
Yeah.
talking,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
Yeah, and I think some of that is, and hat tip to Martha Danes. I think she sees that, right? It's like you start pulling kids together who are in that higher level of athletic development, whatever you want to
Like-minded.
call that.
Yeah.
Like they're going to push each other.
Yeah.
They're going to make each other better, and that's going to push the coaching, and the coaching is going to push them, and that kind of keeps wiggling the whole thing upward, which is cool. So at any rate, we've got it down to 25. We've got our roster. First thing, if it'll probably be out by the time that we release this podcast, but Jackie Finland at the Rugby Breakdown has asked for our roster. We've supplied that. Midwest Thunderbirds, the opponent, has already published theirs on the Rugby Breakdown, and I would assume USA South Selects will do something similar soon. But at any rate, we head down to St. Petersburg, Florida, February 17th, 18th, 19th. We travel on the 16th. 2 days of competition. We're going to play each team multiple times in kind of a round robin format, which should give each one of these kids a real opportunity to show what they can do, which is kind of an important thing for them.
Looking forward to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so far so good. I mean, it's never going to be perfect. It'd be great if we could practice each week. I mean, the potential is ridiculous. You see all right, you get this many good kids together. There's a ton that could be done if we had them all in one place for a while, like a true camp scenario.
Yeah.
But for what we've got so far, we're feeling really good about it.
So before we jump off the Selects update, let's want to give a quick shout out to the coaches who can't be here today.
Yeah, so we've got a pretty good squad, a big squad, and so Dobbs is leading it. He's the head coach. Stacy Mancuso, who is listed as the associate head coach. It doesn't look like she's gonna be able to travel with us, but we're happy to have her. Her kind of voice in the process, and
Right.
Hopefully that'll be more and more as this thing grows. Myself, I'm going to be coaching the backs with Jeff at Amsic from North Bay, and then in the pack we got Brian Melody and Shane Flynn, who are stepped in, and then we got these guys who are
West
helping.
County, West County.
So Brian O'Brien, who made their appearance at the conference, and of course you, Steph, with us as well. So it's a big team.
Oh, go on.
Did I miss anybody?
I don't think so.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a solid squad, and
And we all get along
yeah, which
for the most part.
For the most part.
yeah, which is shocking. I mean,
Anyway, great update on the Selects, and looking forward to more developments there, and certainly looking forward to getting down to St. Petersburg and putting the show on. Let's get into emerging a little bit, like this new development that came out this year. Let's give a little bit of a background and kind of talk about where we are at this point.
Yeah, so the emerging, we're calling it kind of an emerging project or emerging pilot. It's an idea. We're going to test it this year. Like all ideas, it could fall flat on its face or it could grow. We're not sure. I feel pretty good about it, but the basic thought of it is this. The criticism of a super league, if you're going to put a super league together, the criticism is that you're going to leave sort of a path of destruction, kind of a wake behind you. On the smaller clubs.
Yeah.
So you have these state-based organizations, they're trying to kind of quilt together leagues, and we know there are bigger clubs and there are smaller clubs, and some have a hard time recruiting or putting a product on the field. And if you start pulling away the top competitors and putting them kind of on a pedestal, what happens? Naturally, the athletes on those smaller clubs who maybe aren't getting the exposure
Going to gravitate.
they're going to want to go that way.
Yeah.
And we totally get that. And I know that's been some, I would say, relatively quiet criticism, but criticism nonetheless of the effort, of the EGRL effort. And so we
Always going to have our haters.
well, yeah, unfortunately.
Haters going to hate. Play on.
So the idea came up this year with the the concept of saying, well, what if we were able to put together some way of highlighting those smaller squads? Can we use the platform that we're building to highlight those smaller squads, give them an opportunity to go forward, build a little bit, and also give them an opportunity to sort of play their way in if they're really ready. So one of the things which I think was really, really smart on behalf of the executive board, which for clarity I don't sit on, so I can't take any credit for it.
Neither do I.
What was this idea of you have to prove that you can hang at this level. So play against an opponent who's an existing team, show that you play them competitively before you make a bid into the league.
Yep.
I really like that because I think if you look at other sports, there is this lopsided thing. It becomes a little bit of a money grab where you have teams who are competitive at this level and you have teams who really aren't, but they're looking for the brand. And so they're going in and getting absolutely housed every single game.
College football, great example of that.
Yeah. And it's not good for anybody, right? Like that's a lose-lose. The kids who are at the top are, possibly leaning off a little bit in those games, and that's when injuries happen.
Sure.
And the kids at the bottom are putting themselves, in a place where they're just not ready to compete. They're not developmentally there yet. And so we have to figure out a way to balance that.
Yeah.
And I think everybody, all the coaches, all the programs are on board with the idea of, okay, let's try to balance it. So the emerging thing is our first attempt.
I think it's a great insight, too, to start that way and say, we're the inclusive nature of the sport, right? And it's like we're looking at it and saying, hey, if we're really going to grow the game, we can't differentiate and separate from the total pack, right, as we develop this youth game and go on. So when I heard about the emerging component, I was really heartened by this effort because I think it really speaks to that ethos of, like, we're growing the game in its totality. We're not saying, to your point, the money grab, and we're identifying certain athletes, and then we're gonna mold these athletes into this super squad. It's like it's really truly about growing the game in the United States. And hats off to everybody and the folks who can't be here today for that. So,
well, and Steph, you spoke to on the last podcast. You spoke to the fact that there was 3 solid New Jersey high school girls teams back in when your daughter was playing, and they're all the only one left now is Morris.
Yeah.
So it speaks to the fact that rugby is a really delicate thing, and especially at the younger levels. And really, if we want to grow this game, it has to start at the younger levels. And it only starts with dedication of families and coaches. And you never want to be part of anything that puts a team under.
Yeah, and I think I think it's part of who we are as a club locally, right? Thanks to Bill Dobbs and Jan Monrad, who took on that opportunity to start that U14 team, right? It's like that to me is pathway, right, for the local. And then, and if I could, as a group, we recommend to other teams, like that U14 component has been so beneficial to us being able to stay competitive and keeping the numbers, right? It's about recruitment for the high school, but man, if you can get those athletes in at that younger age, right? And then Chris, you were a big component of that recently as well. And, if we can offer a piece of advice out there to those clubs that are looking for it, get that U14 program going. You're only going to benefit.
And once you get it started, make sure every practice and game is fun. Has to be fun, or the kids are not going to want to play.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah, and hats off to Marge and Kate for what they're doing with that program now and keeping it exciting and alive. And I think we were lucky to find these 2 young women who have this passion and dedication for the game. So hats off to you guys if you're listening.
Yeah, when you think about the kids that have come up from the U14 level just at our club, like they're plug and play. Like some of these kids are going straight in. They already know the game. It's great, and they just build on that at the high school level. It's fantastic.
So speaking about development, let's talk about the recent conference that you guys attended. Why don't you guys take it over from there?
Yeah, thanks. So Brian and I went down last weekend to Alexandria and attended the Women's Rugby Coaches and Referees Association conference. I think there's about 165 in total. I think to be able to promote the league, and thanks to Kerry Heffernan for providing a table to us, we were able to promote what the league is all about. And we brought the trophy down and had a ball. We were grateful to get the ball into the museum.
To the league?
Very positive.
Good.
Yeah. I think that we had a lot of good conversations through the weekend. I had a conversation with Josie from Princeton on Saturday. She said she's very supportive of what we're doing, loves to see it all, especially given that we're focused on the 15s. There's so much sevens going on through the year that to be able to give forwards a chance to shine in a 15s environment is huge for the colleges. So yeah, no, really, really well received.
Yeah, and then they had some just unbelievably amazing and inspiring stories. It was the first year that they had the Kathy Flores Lifetime Achievement Award. So there was, I think, total 8 nominations. So we had Martha Daines, Liz Kirk, Krista McFarren, Barbara Fugate, K.O. Onfrey, Mary Beth Matthews, Nancy Fritz, and Julie McCoy. They were the ones that were nominated, and it was just really inspiring. And then we had time to hang out with Kevin O'Brien, who was the first US. No relation.
Maybe a distant relation, but
yeah, he was a Welsh Kevin O'Brien, so he was the first women's head coach, and he was also a former Harvard head coach. So yeah, it was really, really awesome.
So
Yeah,
quick little side note: Nancy Fritz was one of the educators for my level 300.
Oh, no way.
I did my 300.
Awesome.
Yes,
Nice.
she was great.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I'll jump in with a little extra shout out to Mary Beth, Team Bowdoin. She's got Lauren right now, and
His daughter.
Yeah, my oldest daughter, and yeah, that's awesome. I was really pumped to see her name in there, and she's been at it for a while. She actually, to kind of put it in perspective, one of the legends in our house is the fact that she coached against Lindsay. So when my wife played, my wife was a number 9 for UConn, and she remembers going up and getting pounded on by Bowdoin. And yeah, so she's like, oh yeah, I played against you, and that's how long she's been involved in the sport. So, goodbye her.
A little bit of rugby legacy. That's always good to hear, right? That there actually is history in this country for rugby, right? It's I think we're always kind of looked on as like that emerging, or they call it the sleeping giant, right? It's when we'll get there, but there is some rich rugby history in this country. I mean, if you think about New York rugby going back to 1929, and then some of the West Coast sides, in particular when you get up into Vancouver, that are going back to like the 1880s, et cetera. So, I think it's just the ability to tap into that, which is exactly what we're doing here today. One last question to the guys who went down. Highlight from the weekend.
That's really tough. There was some amazing stories. There was one story, one of these awesome women that were the first recipients of the Kathy Flores Award were talking about when they were playing in the World Cup, and one of the players their boots were too large, so she had blisters all over her feet, and one of the other players said, "It's only skin pain," and it's basically like, get going, it's like, and she's like, yeah, it's just unbelievably inspiring, like how tough these women were, and just mentally, physically, and emotionally, they had to do it all themselves, and there was really no support behind them. And the women's programs were a big part of the US getting rugby into the Olympic sports canon. So
wow,
it was some awesome stories. Yeah.
Well, glad that we've made first contact with this conference, and looking forward to developments as we go through.
Definitely, and we're definitely going to bring some of our younger girls down to see this in the future for sure.
I think that's a capital idea, right?
Yeah.
It's like that inspirational, great for us, but really for our athletes, I think that's a fantastic idea. Fantastic
Definitely.
idea.
Yeah, no, I think certainly, I was sitting there on Saturday evening in front of the, the award ceremony with Brian and Kevin at the table, and just thinking, oh my God, I wish my daughter was down with me at this, because just I
remember you saying that.
Yeah, just the amount of inspirational tales happening, throughout the evening and all that, I think if our players today, and not just in our club, but across the country, were able to hear some of these stories, I think it would just take their motivation to another level.
Right.
So yeah, more to
And
come.
we really believe that we're not just a rugby team, we're not just a club. The history of the game is really important, and it's really important that our athletes actually know the history that came before them, because they're standing on those shoulders.
Yep.
That's a great point. So let's segue into the schedules up, actually. So why don't we talk a little bit about the development there and what we're looking at for the spring season. Spring season of 15s, which is
Yeah.
terrific.
Thank
So,
God.
yeah, it's available, right? I mean, so if you go to egrl.org and you click on schedule or whatever the actual link is, it doesn't start till March, so you got to scroll down a bit. But the calendar's up and it's looking pretty cool. Like basically what we tried to do this year was have, almost like a jamboree style, like bring multiple teams into one location at the same time so that we can really benefit from, like all of the production value. So like what we're doing today and the ability to live stream and a lot of that's going to allow us to promote the game, promote these athletes, kind of get that platform out there and hopefully get them in front of supportive coaches, like you mentioned. So that's on there. We've got a northern, a central, and a southern division,
Amazing.
kind of like event. And we're hoping, right now it's looking pretty good, that at least on those major dates that we'll be able to live stream the games and get that out and on the platform, which is our YouTube channel where this podcast appears. And then there's also the emerging weekend. So that's kind of a fourth jamboree style. That's in May. And
Again,
then,
not forgetting about the development of the game and incorporating it in. Fantastic. I mean, I'm really stupefied at how quickly this has come together, Mike. Guys, like this is...
yeah, I mean, like-minded, right? I mean, you get a bunch of like-minded folks into the same, virtual, let's call it, room, and I think that it makes it easy. We all sort of know what needs to happen and what needs to, occur, but there's a lot of moving parts locally. So even if there's a lot of moving parts locally, how do you bridge it out even further? So that anyway, so that's March, and then starts in March. Some tournaments are kind of sprinkled in there. Some different teams going to different tournaments.
Can I say something? You said you get the like-minded people together. The one thing, since we've all started working together, and now with the league, and it's the thing I tell people all the time, everything's been tried over and over again. Like the same thing, how a tournament's run, how a league's been run. And the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. We are outside the box on everything we do. And as many times as I know you have said to me, we should do this, and I look at you like you have two heads, and I'm like, okay, it's got to work. and
I think that was a compliment.
It is.
Somewhere deep,
Because
deep.
Somewhere in there, that was a
Nobody's ever
compliment.
done it before that I know of, and it's like, well, nobody's done it this way. So, all right, maybe it'll work. Let's try it.
But
You
if you
say
look
that
at
as
it,
if I haven't heard that before in my life. I just kind of usually answer with, well, I'm left-handed. So, yeah, that's how it goes.
Now it's just anything Mike says. He goes, I have an idea. I go, yeah, let's do it. It's not even. I don't
That
even
may not
find
be
out
good
what the
advice.
idea is.
We should put a disclaimer in here somewhere. That may not be a good choice.
yeah, but if you look at coming out of COVID, how much everything across the landscape was decimated.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's a clean slate to starting everything too. So
Oh, fair
maybe
point,
these
yeah.
wacky ideas that we come up with sometimes aren't going to always hit, but hey, we'll give them a shot and we'll circle back to the drawing board. Hopefully something works out. So
Right. We'll take what works, keep going, and what doesn't,
Yeah.
just let it fall.
Well, listen, there's no straight path to the top of the mountain, right? I mean, so we're going to bounce back and forth and we're going to ping pong, and hopefully we have like those rails that they have in bumper bowling, like
Yeah.
we don't fall off the edge of the cliff like that. But if we can just bounce our way forward, then hey, we're making progress.
I just got passed a note on Mars, so let's
Yeah.
chat a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, so that's the pinnacle, right? That is the top of our season, top of our mountain as a league.
Yeah.
We end in June, June 10th, 11th. And the beauty of Mars, which again, just for those not in the know, stands for Mid-Atlantic Women's Rugby Showcase, is that it is both a showcase where we invite teams from outside the league and a championship event for those teams who are at the top of the league. So it's kind of like two events in one. The first day allows the top four teams to play in kind of a semifinal final, and hopefully as years go, we'll expand that. Top four. So the winner of each division and the top fourth team, the wild card, With any luck in years in the future, we'll have more teams that'll build that up, and we'll have a full playoff structure. But then the other side is we invite teams, right? So this is, I think, a really good opportunity for those clubs who think they're at this level to come show that.
Yeah.
You know, so if you got a club and you're coming from wherever and you want to be the next EGRL team, Mars is definitely the easiest way to play your way in, because you will play against the other teams. And then, you know, that's happening all in front of college coaches. And
Yeah, last year we had a team from Arizona.
And I was going to mention
Great
that.
team, great kids, great coaches.
yeah, Arizona Bobcats.
Love the grass.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got off the bus and they're like, oh, wow.
I think it even rained a little bit
Brilliant.
for 'em.
Yeah, and you know, just to add to that, we also we want to make sure that there's a place for that club that doesn't have enough to do 15. So we want to make sure that if you're an individual player out there, contact us. We will find you a team to play on for the weekend, because it's really important that you get in front of those college coaches and show them what you can do. So that's definitely a major factor of what we're doing.
Yeah, it's probably an undersold value, sort of an undersold like component, you know, is that we open it up. We don't promote it probably as strongly as we should, that individual players are welcome and that we will place you with a team. Because we know, again, it's kind of like the same conversation with the emerging. Like there are clubs out there who have really talented individual athletes, but they're not big enough for whatever reason to play 15s.
Right, struggling with numbers, whatever the case may be. Yeah.
Finances, too.
Finances as
Yeah.
well.
So those kids lose on the deal. And we don't want them to feel the pressure to leave their club. Like they might be the ones who are laying down the roots to build the next great club.
Sure.
But we do want them to still have those avenues and those channels. So yeah, we welcome. We had a kid from Indiana show up last year, played with North Bay. She did a great job.
Play great, yeah.
Yes, you did. Well, that's a great point too, and it's like this is kind of a shout out to the Central and West Coast teams. Like this is a great opportunity to come out. You're in proximity to the city of New York, which is great for the fun afterwards. But you're also putting yourself in front of all these, you know, standout coaches from these great programs on the East Coast. So hopefully we'll start seeing more teams coming from a greater area.
Yeah, I would love that. I mean, that would be the ideal scenario. Would be for us to outgrow Bunt Park. You know, so we're at Bunt Park. That's in Clinton. It would be amazing if we outgrew
Thanks to your
those
brother.
schools. Yeah, well, definitely Eric gets a little shout out for that. He's paved the way a little bit for us.
The nicer Eisenhart.
So, okay, I mean, I think that's wrapping it up for us today, guys. Looking forward to seeing everybody in Florida in the coming month. And as we ended it last time, go Eagles.
Thank you for listening to Episodes from the Garage, the official, unofficial voice of the Elite Girls Rugby League. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Elite Girls Rugby League and follow us on Instagram at Elite Girls Rugby. Special thanks to our producers, Team O'Brien, Bravo the Dog for a cameo contribution, and of course, our wives and daughters who entertain our crazy ideas and continue to associate with us respectfully.